Oh yeah, you should. I think that she is someone to talk to about that. I'm hoping this gets all you guys. Like I'm and you know, I try to do the same. Like I'm still stepping into like nothing. I feel like a certain like it's easier right. And it's gambling. Like from like 10 years ago. It's really nice. Yeah. Yeah. Wild. Yeah. They have one here in it's like it's I but they have like all this my battery is amazing how many things we are all in
It's so cool. In Texas, it was basically just beef and river. But, because Mexico is so close, it's just so much cheaper to go to Mexico. But yeah, I didn't appreciate just how much you can. I mean, not year round, but
the variety. Like,
and I have been really impressed by how much you can actually grow your own. That some of the farms that have greenhouses and are able to be creative and do year round. I mean, if we were going to, there's one in Chelsea and there are a couple in Ann Arbor, farm stops. They basically just sell on consignment to farms. So the farms drop it off and say, this is my stuff, this is the price, and they take 20% of retail. And they've got stuff year round.
Right.
In the winter, it's potatoes and
How you doing? All right. You doing all right? Long time. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Michelle.
Sure.
Yes.
Thank you.
Well, welcome to everyone, and thank you for being here. I know you've rearranged schedules in order to do that, and this is a really important discussion. We are so happy. Thank you, Lieutenant Governor, for lifting up this topic and having this roundtable discussion on what this will mean for the residents of Michigan, the residents of our community here in the Lansing area, and possibly what everyone can do, right, to make things better as we move forward. So I'm going to quick introduce first myself. I'm Michelle Lance. I'm the CEO here at Greater Lansing Food Bank. We cover 7 counties in Michigan. We also have 7 food banks that cover all of Michigan. And as you can see, we're a warehouse, right? We're not the frontline food pantry. We have 330 of the food pantries that work with us and get their food from us. So we do work in tandem as partners. We also have representative from our State Association for Food Banks here. I'm going to have everyone introduce themselves in a second. but you can hear a little more perspective on all of the food banks and how things are looking at this point. First of all, I probably don't need to introduce our Lieutenant Governor. Thank you. I don't know if you have a few opening words you would like to say before the rest introduce themselves, but I will give you the floor.
Let them introduce themselves.
Okay, perfect. Perfect. All right. Anna, why don't we go ahead and go with you as a quick introduction?
Yeah, happy to. I'm Anna Almanza. I'm the Director of Public Policy and Government Relations for the Food Bank Council of Michigan, which serves as the state association for the 7 regional Feeding America affiliated food banks that collectively serve all 83 counties through partnership of a network of 2,800 agencies across the state.
Thank you. Bishop?
All right, Bishop Samuel Duncan. I don't oversee as much as Anna here, but I oversee 20 churches throughout the state of Michigan. I pastored a church on the south side in Lansing for 33 years, and I just turned that over on December 31st to a younger man who's more energetic and can take the ministry to the next level. But boots on the ground for a long time in the inner city and understand the need, the value, and the importance of something like this.
Mm-hmm. But never discount age, grace, and wisdom. Doctor?
Hello, my name is Cheryl Eshba, and I'm with Michigan State University Extension, representing one of the 2 implementing agencies for SNAP education, also representing the College of Agriculture and Natural Resources.
Okay.
Howdy, Alex Knave. I'm the policy director at the Fair Food Network. We run the food stamps. You can get 2 for 1 on fresh fruits and vegetables at 230 participating farmers markets and grocery stores across the state.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Lieutenant Governor.
Well, thank you everyone for being part. Can all y'all hear me? I'm not sure we can hear. It's warehouse.
It is, yes. And we do have a microphone
No,
if
appreciate
indeed we're getting a little quiet.
I want to thank all of our roundtable participants for being part of this, and thank everyone in the audience for joining this really important and urgent conversation. I don't think it's possible to overstate what is at stake for individuals, families, and communities in Michigan and in America with what is on the table in Congress and in the United States Senate right now, and the hurt and harm that will be done to people who are hungry and who are fighting to be healthy in communities across our state with what is happening in Congress. The not just potential, but proposed cuts to Medicaid, the proposed cuts to the SNAP program will literally leave Michiganders hungry, will literally cause Michiganders to die faster. And these are the types of things that we cannot and must not accept. I'm angry about it. You know, the fact that we have people who are, grasping for stability at a time when things are expensive, even more so than they have been in a long time. You have people who are doing everything they can to put some modicum of food in their children's bellies. As we now enter into the summer months, where families that were able to at least have a kid eat a couple of meals at school, thanks to the free breakfast and free lunch that Governor Whitmer and I made happen with the Michigan legislature. Now in the summer months, that gets more challenging and more complicated, because to be able to eat consistently, and that has nothing but negative outcomes. So I think the message today, at least from my perspective, from a starting point, is very clear. Michiganders need these cuts to be blocked. We need the Michigan congressional delegation. We need Congressman Tom Barrett. We need them to vote against this bill when it comes back to the House of Representatives. And because they have constituents that are also my constituents. And I want them to not be hungry. I want them to be healthy. I want them to be positioned for success, health, wealth, and opportunity. And this, no one is helped by what is coming out of being proposed and being debated in Washington right now. Only people will be hungrier, people will be healthier, kids won't learn. Having policy like this that so specifically and dangerously targets children, pregnant women, seniors, the people who are most served by the food that comes through this warehouse. It's really something that's very upsetting. And I appreciate all of you for offering perspective on what it means for the people who you serve and who you see and who you connect with every day. But in my conversations all across Michigan, I hear a sense of urgency and a call to action for Congress not to act in this manner. So here in Michigan, we're going to do everything we can to make sure we make that call clear. And we are going to do everything we can at the state level to make sure we can protect it as well.
Fantastic. Yeah. And I think it's fair to say, too, that the charitable network cannot keep up with the demand almost already. And if the cuts were to happen, that there's just no way that that's going to be sustainable. So that's not an option, right? That's been like that since COVID. I wanted to ask Bishop if you wouldn't mind, because you talk to a lot of constituents, your parishioners and community members. Can you give us perspective? What is a typical SNAP recipients look like? What is their family makeup? And what are you hearing from your parishioners that could be helpful to this conversation?
Well, Michelle, first and foremost, they look like people. All
Yes.
right. They don't have necessarily a color or a certain social or economic background per se. They are people that are trying to make it. They are good people, but yet caught up in situations sometime beyond their control and not necessarily due to their own mistakes or decisions. I see people, again, making it from day to day. I see some that they need the help, but they're somewhat even embarrassed to come and get that assistance. I see people that without this, it is the end of the road, as it says in the first two words of the acronym, supplemental, nutrition. And without that, as the Lieutenant Governor has already said, it shortens their life expectancy. It causes a sense of desperation for people. No parent wants to see their child hungry. It affects their performance in school. It lends itself for them to become very vulnerable to gains, quick money, easy money, and the list goes on and on. There's just a plethora of subcategories that take place when children are hungry. So again, for this to be taken away, because there's an assumption that people are lazy. Sure, you have excess bad apples in any program, but the majority of the people are good, hard-working people. Arbitrarily, take a minimum wage of $15 an hour, 40 hours a week, $600 pre-tax.
Right.
You tax that. You have $1,200 a month rent. You need 2+ pay periods just to have a roof over your head, let alone pay for anything else. So this supplemental assistance is so needful. One thing I have identified also, Michelle, it's hard for people at the top to relate to people at the bottom. If you've never been hungry, if you've never experienced it, it's hard for you to, one, wrap your mind around it, but number two, make a decision for people that you don't know and you have not lived what they live. So it is a great challenge, and therefore the heart of men, the compassion of good people have to come to the forefront at a time like this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think perception is critical, right? The majority of people are working who are on SNAP, and that's an important message for us to get out there too.
Yes.
They just can't make ends meet.
That's correct.
Yeah. So, all right, let's shift a little bit over to some of the additional programs that are just as important and critical as the food itself, right? SNAP Ed, the educational program, nutrition, health, food, all go hand in hand, right? What would some of the cuts mean for the people in Michigan from your perspective, Doctor?
Well, these proposed cuts to SNAP and SNAP education would be so harmful to children and farmers and Michigan residents like we're talking about here. But truly, we provide the nutrition education so that people can have that daily nutrition and then have healthier eating habits and have more physical activity in the school day. So our organization, MSU Extension, we partner with the local schools and the food banks and the farmers for that education and awareness piece, and so that we can change those behaviors so that it is supplemental and it does support long-term health. And I would say too, these proposed cuts, they do hurt the farmers. We produce such a diverse array of agriculture in the state. We deserve to get locally grown fruits and vegetables into the hands of children in school.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that. And then we have Double Up Food Packs. This is a program that doubles everything, right? Whatever dollars are coming down. Now we're talking about grocery stores as well. There are 9,800 grocery stores in Michigan that could be impacted by these cuts as well. So we're not just talking individuals. Tell us a little bit about that program and what this would mean.
So I think one of the most concerning parts about both the Senate and the House proposal is it would shift the cost of operating the program onto the states. And what we have to remember is, I mean, if the state of Michigan has to assume 25% of the burden of paying for this program, that could blow $1 billion hole in the state's budget. And for those of us who are intimately involved in the state budgeting process, Michigan doesn't have $1 billion under the couch cushions to maintain the status quo. Last week, I was in Washington, D.C., trying to get answers to one central question, which is, what happens if a state can't come up with the money? Not just Michigan, but any state. What would happen? And there is no answer. That there is not a clear answer yet to what would happen. And if, God forbid, in the event of another recession, and the state, isn't bringing in the taxpayer money because people are losing their jobs, and then there's increased demand for SNAP, we don't know what would happen in that case. And so I think that my biggest concern about the proposed cuts are with the state's ability to respond rapidly in the event of an unforeseen economic crisis, or even in good years, to be able to find these kinds of resources to maintain the existing footprint this program has, as you said, in the 9,000 grocery stores and 250 farmers markets across the state.
I want to build on that. So again, the urgency, the best outcome here is for these cuts not to happen, because it is true that backfilling this is not. There's no credible path for us to do that at the state level. So we must focus on protection right now, because the truth is, as Bishop alluded to, like, nobody wants to be hungry. Nobody actually wants to be hungry. Nobody seeks out actually needing to benefit and to be able to be fed because of programs like SNAP or SNAP education. And so the question becomes with any policy decision, it's like, who does this help? Who does this harm? And it is very clear that this is forcing more people into hunger. And there's no reason for, there's no justification for it other than harm. And so I do think that's why this is so urgent. Let me give you some numbers. So just here in the Lansing area, in the 7th congressional district, we know that at least 30,000 households currently use SNAP. And more than a third of them have kids in that household, at least one, who are under the age of 18. And then 152,000 people on top of that benefit from the Medicaid program to get their health insurance. There's intersection between these groups of people. Across the state, 15% of Michiganders, that's 1.47 million people, are participating in the SNAP program, including 500,000 children in Michigan. These are the people who are hurt, who are pushed closer to or pushed over into hunger on a persistent basis with these draconian cuts that are on the table in Congress, and that's why we can't let that.
For the first time, really, since the inception of the program in 1964. Let's just lay that out there too. So Anna, you have a perspective of a statewide, especially with food banks. Talk a little bit about, where would these folks have to shift to, and is that sustainable? What that looks like?
Yeah, to provide a little context, just to understand what we're talking about, there's 1.4 million Michiganders that currently experiencing food insecurity. So that's 1 in 7 Michiganders. It's 1 in 6 children that don't know where their next meal is going to come from. And so the Michigan Food Bank Network, that's 7 regional food banks across the state, last year provided 196 million meals across the state, so the equivalent of about 170 million meals. And so the need has already been significant. People are already impacted by tremendous cost of living and having to make choices between affording food, healthcare, housing. And so when we think about what the food banks were already doing and sort of thinking of the transition we've gone through in early 2025, the food banks have already experienced some significant disruptions in supply chain and funding sources, one of which created a 3-month gap in critical food resources through USDA. this spring, in which $4.3 million worth of Michigan food bank orders were canceled, and it's about 2.5 million pounds of food. And on top of that, we're looking at least of future cuts. We know that we're going to stand to see $11.7 million less of USDA funding coming to Michigan to be able to allow food banks and other local partners to purchase directly from Michigan farmers and processors. And so our food banks are already feeling a bit of the stress and crunch of having to deal with limited resources along with increased costs. And similarly to the households that are feeling that. And so there's often this misconception that the charitable food network is going to be able to come in and fill that gap. And what we're talking about with these SNAP cuts they're not small. These are significant. These are the most significant structural changes, as Alex alluded to, in shifting costs to states, but also the most significant percentage of cuts this program could potentially see at about a 20% cut in funding across the board for the program. And so we're deeply concerned as a Michigan Food Bank Network of our ability to continue to serve the communities in the way that the communities strive to, and knowing that our resources are going to be limited and we simply cannot fill the gap that SNAP cuts will provide. And really appreciate our national organization, Feeding America, provided some context recently of for every one meal a Feeding America food bank can provide, SNAP can provide 9. And so when we think about these proposed cuts, we're looking at the potential of $9.5 billion meals worth of cuts happening. And so for perspective of our national Feeding America food bank network across the board of the food banks, the meal programs, the church pantries, they provided 6 billion meals last year. And so that's a tremendous gap that the charitable network is not going to be able to fill.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, which is unfortunate. So thank you for joining us, Harold. I know you were you were running from meeting to meeting, so we appreciate you being here. I'd like to ask you first to introduce yourself and where you're from, but then also these cuts, these drastic cuts, we know would disproportionately affect certain sectors of our community, including children and people of color and veterans. And can you speak to that a little bit, and what you would potentially see happen if these cuts were indeed to go through? How that would impact the folks on the front lines, our neighbors, our colleagues, our coworkers.
Good day, everyone. My name is Harold Pope. I'm the president of the NAACP here in Lansing. And so my biggest concern, I'm a veteran. I just left the veterans appointment. And so I know that in our community, a lot of people are dependent on support. And to cut that support is it's absurd. I understand why any organization, anybody would think it appropriate to remove this type of funding. As you alluded to, the number of people, I think the estimate is 1.5 million residents here in Michigan, 15% of the families here, and then we know that cuts disproportionately amongst minorities, veterans, those are the disabled. And what is the plan to recover? There is no given plan from that level on what they're looking at cutting. And so it just concerns me that, again, that we would look, children that are going to school, the programs will be cut, and we know how that affects their ability to learn, right? And so those are my concerns.
Mm-hmm. Yes, ours as well. Yes, education, being able to learn, like you were saying, and then the healthcare aspect of not having nutrition could devastate an entire society. Right, we have seen societies across the world over eternity die out because of the lack of nutrition.
Yes.
So I'm going to open it up now a little bit to anyone on the panel who either heard something that they wanted to expand on, or if there are any other kind of parting thoughts. We only have about 10 minutes left here to talk about not only the cuts, but how it would impact your constituents, and maybe what you're even hearing directly from your constituents at the state level.
I mean, when I have been across whether it's this region or other parts of Michigan, I think the question in people's minds is just why? Like, what federal government decision is worth a hungry kid? And there's not an answer to that question. There is no justification for why it's anything. The other way that folks have asked me about it, and someone asked about this in Shiawassee County, was just like, so how is what they're doing gonna make something better? And again, there's no answer to that question.
No.
As a policymaker, as a leader, our job is to solve problems, not create them. Our job is to find ways to improve things, not dismantle or destroy them without another plan. And there is no plan. There is just only the harm, only the hurt, only the hunger that comes from this. And so I talk with Michiganders, asking for us to fight back, asking for us to stand tall against this stuff, asking for us to do everything we can in our power to not have this come down on people in Michigan. And it's really, that's why, again, we need this call to action. We need Congressman Barrett. We need our whole delegation to stand up for families who deserve to be able to eat in Michigan.
Right.
Where's the logic? Right? Where's the logic?
Yeah.
What was the strategy? I mean, it's more harm than anything else.
Right, because we're talking about basic nutrition,
Yes.
just basic food, not luxury goods, not
Right.
trips to wherever, right? It's all about the basic food that we believe, and I'm sure most of you as well, people deserve food. It's a right, right? It's not a luxury. It's not something that only certain people who can afford it should have. This is a basic need, and we're called to take care of each other.
I can share that I'm in several organizations. One of the organizations I'm part of, every month, the third Saturday of every month, we participate in the mobile food pantry and giving out food. Our organization specifically, we're in the front end of it. So we go and we build boxes to be delivered. So the people that can't make it, we deliver. And the gratitude, the comments you receive from the people who you give the food to, standing there in the line, one of the cars that are coming through, people are very appreciative. They're not sneaking and saying, "Oh, I got over." They're saying thank you. They're saying, "I appreciate you for doing this." And I say it's not coming out of my pocket. It's the kindness of my heart and the support my organizations are doing to help deliver the food. Food's not coming from us. It's coming from someone. And again, where's the logic in cutting back? Where's the logic?
Yes, it's a responsibility that we have as a society to take care of our own,
Absolutely.
right? Especially those who are most vulnerable. Any other parting words? We have just 5 minutes left.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Ed.
I just, not to sort of continue to say, I mean, I just feel like we can't understate right now how tremendous the proposed cuts are right now. And so just really wanted to reiterate, this is not just some SNAP participants in Michigan or across the country that will be impacted. It's every single SNAP participant that will be impacted by at least some of these proposals that are out there. And that's nearly 1.5 million SNAP participants here and 42 million across the country. And so just when you think about that it's not just some people, even though there are those that are going to be disproportionately impacted by some of these policies, it's every single SNAP participant. And that's $3 billion that SNAP provided for our local economy last year. And so when we think about the jobs that our local businesses are able to provide when getting this revenue in, how is that going to impact beyond just the SNAP households? It's going to impact our neighbors. It's going to impact our local communities. And so I think that that's something to just sort of take away from today is it's not just those that are participating in the program. It's really taken away from the health and well-being of our communities across the country. And also to say that we are, not against wanting to make programs better and more effective and more efficient. We're absolutely for that. But there are processes for that. We are overdue for a farm bill. And these proposed cuts are so significant that they're going to make it almost impossible to try to pass a farm bill moving forward. And that's the piece of legislation that would normally allow for you to make changes to these programs to improve them. And so I think that that's something, we feel we want to see all of those USDA programs continue to be improved and strengthened. And this is really making it so we're likely not going to see a farm bill, or it's going to become very challenging to see that go through moving forward if these cuts find their way through.
You have
And
a
I was
last
going
word?
to say that a lot of these cuts will create irreparable damage that cannot be made up, cannot be fixed, and cannot be restored. Once it's done, it's done. Families are destroyed, and they'll never, ever recover. And again, you said 1964, this program in some form has been in existence. What has so drastically changed now? One of the greatest, if not the greatest nation in the world, right? The richest.
Right.
Money galore, money to study, butterflies, and so forth. But what about humanity? It has went from people to politics. And the politics has got to stop, because you're dealing with real people and their lives. And I don't think the gravity of that has really set in. This is real for people that are on the ground, grassroots people, lives, not politics, not games, but lives. And politicians need to really understand that. It's not about politics, but it's got to be about people.
Yeah. What a great way to end, right? This is a generational problem that we will be facing for years to come. Our children and grandchildren will feel the ramifications of this. So I want to thank you all for joining us today. This was important conversation. We do have time afterwards if there are additional questions, and we would welcome that as well. We've got you can either do it out here in the warehouse if you want some good visuals, or we have a room that's being held if you want just a more quiet environment too for those questions. So thank you so much for bringing this to the table, literal and figural, and raising awareness of this problem.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.